Welcome to your Bible guide. We're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 7 today. And we've been studying the story of Moses and the Israelites getting freed from slavery from Egypt. And we've been moving through this incredible story, and we've seen Moses' calling, his encounter at the burning bush, going to the Pharaoh, all the plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea. And that puts us out in the wilderness now as the Israelites are heading towards the Promised Land. And they're having a variety of different challenges as they go into the wilderness, and it's a pretty big journey from Egypt up to Israel. And so they're moving through, and of course they're getting hungry. There's a lot of them. There's a pretty big crowd. The Bible says somewhere around million-ish, give or take a little bit, plus their animals. And so they're consistently wanting food, right? They're wanting water. They get thirsty because they're out in this kind of wilderness desert area. And so, but we've also been seeing, God beginning to kind of test them to see where their faith is and to try to grow them as a people who are ready to enter into the Promised Land. So we're going to pick up in chapter 17, chapter 16, where we left off before, is this story where they receive manna from heaven. It talks about the quail as well, but we see this provision that God is providing them. Before that, they were thirsty, and we're going to see that play out again today in chapter 17. So I'm just scrolling up here now to chapter 17. Let's look at it today. Verse 1, it says, "All the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandments of the Lord." Right? So they had this kind of big camp set up, and they have to, moving that many people, is not just a small little task. And so whenever the cloud or the fire would move, God's presence would move them, and they'd follow. And so they're moving. This area that it mentions here, the wilderness of sin, they're not really sure where that is. Okay, so there's a couple ideas of where possibly this could be. Because you're moving from Egypt up to Israel. Are you in Egypt? Are you in Saudi Arabia? Where exactly are you? We're not sure. It gives some names in here, and there's debate over where that is. I'm not going to get tons into the debate. It's kind of interesting and stuff, but they're on their way to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, also, which is sometimes called Horeb, right? And so I don't want to get tons in the details of this because we really don't know. Okay, but I just want you to be aware of that no one really knows. Okay, so according to the commandment of the Lord, and they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. Okay, so they're again in this place, and there's a lot of them, and they're thirsty, and they're in a wilderness desert area, and so obviously we're going to see a problem here. Verse 2, "Therefore the people quarreled with Moses," right? So every time they go do stuff and they're like, "Moses, is your fault," right? "You're the one that led us out of captivity, out of slavery, and it's your fault now that we're thirsty, okay, that we don't have anything to drink." So they quarrel with Moses, and it says, they said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" Right? And so he's equating their complaints and quarrels not just with him, but with God himself. Why are you testing the Lord? Why are you not trusting in him? Do you not remember where we've been till now and how God has consistently been faithful? But right, like I said, we read these texts and we look at the Israelites and we're like kind of bashing them. Oh man, just have some faith. But they are just so accurate to, I think, how we are as people, right? Man, we saw God move yesterday. God moved last week. God moved last year. But now this other thing came up, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And we lose faith. We lose hope. Surely God can't come through again. And so, but part of it is just, just as humans, we often just see with our physical sight, we don't really see with spiritual eyes. And so we just see the problems in front of us. And we need to remember, man, God is faithful. And God is teaching the Israelites through this. Like, hey, time after time after time, I'm faithful to you. I'm going to come through. I'm not just going to lead you out here to die in the wilderness, the whole group of you. Okay, obviously, maybe there was some different tragedies and stuff like that, but he's like, I'm not going to kill you all because you don't have enough water to drink. So Moses is like, why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water. Okay, they were thirsty. Okay, and I get that, right? You got families, you got kids, you got animals, and they're all thirsty. But their attitude here, obviously is trying to show us their attitude is not in the right place. So why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted for the water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Right? God, is this what you're trying to do, Moses? Are you just trying to kill us all out of here? So Moses cries out to the Lord, right? And so we see kind of this pattern going where the people are hungry or thirsty or, find something. They grumble towards Moses. Then Moses calls out to God like, hey, what am I supposed to do with these people? Okay, we see that verse 4. Moses cried to the Lord, what shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. Now this is something that I think that's really important that we pick up on because as followers of Jesus, we're called to go and make disciples. And part of the discipleship process is to helping take people on their journey toward God and toward His will and towards the thing He has for them. And sometimes, if you're dealing with people, it kind of feels this way. It's like, man, it's like, come on, guys, make a good decision, right? How about you string a couple of good decisions together? Why do you keep going back to that? Why do you keep getting stuck in that sin? Why do you keep complaining to God? Why do you keep whining, right? Like, and you see that, and so you can kind of relate maybe in a couple different places. Maybe the person like, I don't know what God's trying to do here. I don't like it, and I'm kind of grumbling at Him. Or you're leading people, and you see people like, man, why don't just change your mind? Just think differently about this. And so you can kind of identify maybe with a couple different people in here. And so Moses cries out, what shall I do with this people? Right? He's like kind of at wit's end, like, okay, God, they keep complaining at me. They keep coming at me. They wanted to, like, almost about to stone me is what it looked like they were going to do, is what he says, right? They're almost ready to stone me. Okay, verse 5, it says, and the Lord said, okay, this is an important thing to remember, is that we have a God who speaks, okay? And it's not always going to be necessarily as audible, and it might just be from His word. It might be from a leader or something else. But the Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Right? And so God is instructing Moses on, hey, okay, here's what you do. Okay, go find some of the leaders, right? Get them up in line with you, and you're gonna take your staff, okay? The one which you struck the Nile, right? So he must have been carrying around the same kind of staff going along this whole journey. And here's your task. Okay, verse 6. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Okay, right? It said so it kind of interchanges Horeb, Sinai. Like I said, there's a couple main ideas of where this could be. There's like a traditional Sinai site. There's kind of the secondary Sinai site, and maybe in Saudi Arabia. There's actually some really neat, if you go on YouTube and do some searching, some really interesting videos on possible, which one is the true Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb. Okay, and so you're gonna stand before there, and it says that the God Himself will stand before you there on the rock. Okay, now I'm not sure exactly what that means, of what it means that He's gonna stand out before them, right? There's certain times where God kind of shows up in certain ways, so we don't know if the cloud or the pillar of fire are gonna come before Him there, but the reality is God is saying to Moses, like, don't worry, I'm here with you. Like He just has to remind Moses. Okay, just like sometimes we need to remind it, like, okay, in the midst of difficult discipleship, difficult life things, God is there with us. So behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. Okay? And so if you're familiar with this story, you're like, oh, yeah, that's the story. Moses takes his little stick, and he strikes the rock, and water comes out. I want you to think of what is happening here. Right? God is going before him, and he's with Moses. They're with the leaders. They kind of like get everyone's attention. And Moses is going to hit a rock with a stick, and water's going to come out of this. Right? Like, this is no normal, easy task. Right? This is just some incredible thing that's about to happen, because water doesn't hang out in rocks. But this is what he asked him to do. Okay? And it says, you shall strike the rock, water will come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders in Israel. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord among us or not? Okay, so at the very end of it, the people are trying to say, is God really with us? Is God really doing this? And maybe you feel that way sometimes as you're trying to follow Him and do the things He's asking you. It's like, okay, is He really with us? Because it doesn't seem like He is sometimes. And often God has a habit of showing up just in time, with just enough, um, for you to make it. And we see this in this story too, where God shows up just in time. They're thirsty, but he intervenes, and he's showing them like, I am with you, right? That's their question: is the Lord among us or not? And the answer is yes, because God provided in this area. God did this. Okay, so just interestingly enough, there are a couple actual rocks that potentially people think this could be. There's one I think in Saudi Arabia that literally is this big rock that split, and that's where kind of some of the thought of like maybe it's here. There's also another rock by the traditional Mount Sinai site as well, Sinai Mountain, where it looked like it could potentially be a rock that was split. So it's really interesting that there are a couple rocks that could fit this description. That people actually can go to, and you can go and see them right now and stuff. But the main point of this story is we have a God who is among us, and he provides for us, and he meets us in these places, right? And that's the point of this story is when we go and complain to God, like God's there, like he's ready to show up. Okay. Now what doesn't happen is God doesn't always show up on our terms and how we want it, right? So God showed up here and he's like, I can take a rock and I can put water in it, or water out of it, right? This is how God works. He can take something that doesn't make any sense to us, and he can provide in the way he wants to. And so we need to learn to grow in our faith and see, like, okay, where's God at? I think it's fair to sometimes ask God, like, hey, God, how are you working this out? I don't think we should be grumbling like the people did here. But we also see God is patient, right? He could just start, zapping the people, and we'll actually see him do some of those things in different scenarios later on, where it's like, oh man, you kind of tested too far in this. But we have a God who loves us, and he wants to show us and reveal to us when we ask the question, is the Lord among us or not? And the answer is yes, God is with us.